Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shop Stool podcast. This is season 8, episode 8, and we have another guest joining us today, all the way from Melbourne. Dave, do you want to be called Dave De La Cruz Woodworks, or are we just calling you Dave for the rest of the show?
You can call me what you like, but Dave is good.
Cool. Let's go with Dave. Saying
Alrighty.
You can call you whatever you like. That's a open-ended recipe for disaster. Thanks for coming on the show. We will get into more details why we are talking to Dave today. There's some stuff that's been going on in the background, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But Dave, you're a fantastic woodworker. Your Instagram page shows that. I'm seeing a lot of hand tools involved as well.
Yeah.
Really keen to hear about your journey as a furniture maker and what led you up to a point where you are now finally full-time.
Thanks, and thanks for having me as a guest, guys. I appreciate it. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I think that's what they say in talkback radio these days. I got into woodworking as kind of like an antidote for my corporate life and job that I was working. I think that's probably really a common thing that's happening more these days. So never did it, maybe did a little bit of, design tech in high school, but it wasn't really like serious, proper woodworking or anything like that. It was, make a box or nail two planks together. And so was working this kind of corporate job and got influenced by Adam Savage's Tested channel. He carved a spoon. I thought, I could do that, surely. And so I took a weekend day course at a school in Melbourne that used to run called Handsome & Co., which was a brilliant school, and made, carved a spoon out of cherry and a little chopping board, and I was kind of hooked. Because it was like, I didn't think that I would make anything that looked that good. And then, I brought it home. My wife said, "That's it. You made that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Wow, that was really good." So I kind of got the bug from there. But I think that it was difficult. Well, not difficult, but it was one of those things where it's a hobby. But I was working long hours, and so I was doing it at night in my garage. Didn't exactly want to be making a lot of noise. So it was all about how quiet could I do it, and that's why I was using primarily hand tools.
Right.
Because running a screaming thicknesser at 10 p.m. is a good way to kick off a fight with your neighbour.
Frowned upon.
Hugely frowned upon. I'm in a relatively quiet suburb full of people who could afford really good lawyers. So I'm like, let's just not go there. I'll just use hand tools and keep everyone happy. So I think I knew after doing that little course, I did a little bit more spoon carving by myself, bought a couple of tools, but found it really difficult to access green wood to do it with. And so, didn't know what I was doing. Occasionally when there'd be an arborist around, I'd ask him for a log, and then I tried to split it, and it was a difficult thing to do. And I thought, okay, but I'd love to make a workbench because I feel like you need to start with a workbench. So, discovered Paul Sellers on YouTube, and that just kind of led me fully down the hand tool route of this is how you could make anything and everything with hand tools. And so awesome. I think I really pursued a very traditional style of woodworking, that kind of English joiners, classic joinery style of doing things, because I was watching YouTube instruction and doing all that kind of stuff. So making workbenches and just stuff to have in the garage, and then the tools started to accumulate. There's a really dangerous but brilliant store in Melbourne called the Vintage Tool Shop in Northcote, run by Mike and Mari and their amazing dog. That place they're fantastic people, but it's very dangerous for the wallet. But their stuff is really good.
Yeah.
I think I sort of made the workbench and then thought I should make stuff for me. So started making, stuff around the house, just furniture. So desks, made myself a funky angled dovetail trapezoidal shaped, TV console unit because we were using a dreaded IKEA bookcase on its side for about 5 years. And I thought, I know how to make stuff from wood now. This is terrible. I can't have that in the house. So yeah, it sort of just started really doing it as a hobby, and on the side, and really chasing it and pushing it. And then I did a class. I went to a week-long class with Bern Chandley, the amazing chairmaker. And I was really intimidated by chair making, but I kind of, it's the Windsor chair making, and it's, there's this link, really strong historical link back to traditional furniture making. And so that's why I wanted to do it, just to see what it was like. Because I knew that trying to make a Windsor chair by myself in my garage with no instruction was going to take forever. And I did do it eventually by myself, and it did take forever, but going to class helped a lot. So I went to Bern's class, and I had this really kind of strange moment, which was like the complete opposite of what it was like in my day-to-day corporate life of getting pinged every 2 seconds. And I had this point in time, I was sitting on shave horses, shaving spindles, and fitting the tenons in for the round mortises that they go into. And I had this it was just quiet, and there's 6 other people, and there's nothing but the sound of scrapers, and and it was cold, I think. And I just had this strange thing happen where I remembered something that my grandmother said to me when I was 4. And I don't think my brain had felt that way since I was like, I don't know, a kid, maybe 10 or something like that. Just like this perfect moment of just being fully relaxed and focused at the same time, which was so opposite to every other part of my life that I thought, and I had that, and I held on to that feeling, and I was like, I need to chase this feeling, because it feels like everything else that I do is not good in that way for my brain. Like I constantly felt like my brain was in soup or sluggish or stressed or whatever else it was. And I was like, that sucks. I don't want to, I didn't know that this was possible to have your brain feel this good. So I'm going to do that. And so from there, I think, it wasn't as clear cut thought as, hey, I'm going to, leave doing this and start becoming a furniture maker full time. But it was like, I really enjoyed that feeling. I'm going to go chase it. And so that was what I started to focus on more. It was more about, okay, instead of trying to do 5 minutes here or there or whatever else it is, I'm actually going to block out time on my weekends and trying to get into that flow state. And really, really chase that through what I was making and trying to push myself a little bit more. So made my own rocking Windsor chair, and had that same feeling again, made a shave horse for home, kind of set myself up in the garage. The car doesn't fit anymore. This is now the workshop, and expanded out that way.
Oh,
and,
Dave, cars are waterproof. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. They're designed to be, so it's okay. So I kept wanting to chase that feeling, and I kept finding it happening as I was working for longer periods of time. That was the thing. So if I could get in 3 hours straight on a weekend to do something, it was like, okay, so you get the setup going, and then it's get all your stuff out or whatever else it is, find your tool, check if it's plain sharp, then start going. And this was still all using hand tools at the time. Like I used, electric drill and a driver, but there was no major pieces of machinery in the shop. And just sort of progressed from there and kept making furniture for me or for people that wanted something, and, sort of kept exploring it that way. And then, I got to a position financially where I thought I can take the plunge. I can just, if there's a way to do this, I can do it. And so there was, a round of redundancies came up in my corporate gig, and I put my hand up and said, I'll take one. And then it was okay.
That's brave.
Because you spend 10 years doing this, and you don't really like it for whatever reason. Like, I was in upper level management, you could say, in a pretty large corporation, a very large corporation. And I think, I worked with brilliant and smart and fantastic people, but the end outcome of all of that effort was really not something that aligned with me. And so I thought, if I have the opportunity to just try, you know, even if it goes badly, at least I've tried. And so, you know, built myself a financial runway to be able to do that. And here I am now, running my business. Yeah.
That's a really unique, I feel like that's a really unique kind of origin story, because like we all have pretty similar ways of getting into the industry, but it seems like you just shut out the rest of everything and just bought into it 100% and just nerded out on woodworking for a couple of years, and then that was your job.
Pretty much. I think nerding out is the right way to describe it, because I'm a huge nerd, like massive nerd, and always have been. But I think that I got into it so intensely because nothing else had ever resonated with me that way. Like, you know, I went to uni, you know, did an engineering degree, got a job in a grad program. Like, I just kind of felt like I was getting pushed through a set of steps that you were supposed to do.
Right.
And then this came along, and I was like, oh, this is actually something I enjoy doing. You know, I'm not being told by everybody else that, you know, this is what you should do. This was like, this is the thing that I'm getting something out of. And I also know that it's endless. There is so many. I will never know all the things there is to know, because it's always growing and always expanding. But also the core of what is involved and the technical skills of things you can do. I spoke to a guy who's been carving his whole life, and he's 80. He's a master carver, and he just finished up a frame. It took him 400 hours. And he said, I think this is the only frame I've ever done where I'm happy with every single bit on it. And I said, after 80, you're 80. And he goes, yep, it's taken me that long. And I was like, and instead of being shocked, I was joyous about that, because I was like, fantastic. If I can feel that way when I'm 80, that is so aspirational. I want to be, if I can get there when I'm 50, fantastic. You know, then I got another 30 years of doing it. But to be there at 80 still doing it, and to feel like you still have things to work on to get to that point where you can be happy with the work that you do and the output that you have, you know. And I think that I also really resonated with it because of that idea of it's your hands and your work. You know, for most of what you're doing and what you can be proud of, it's your skill level that defines how well something goes. And in every other aspect of life, you're relying on other people, you know, to make a thing the way that it is. You know, I think, again, that's that antidote to that corporate life of working in a corporation of 40,000 people or whatever else it is. It's like you don't get to have a final say on the quality of what you make at the end of 5 years of effort. You know, it's a joint thing. So,
yeah. And is there even anything tangible to look at after those 5 years?
There's usually a website.
Stress lines, gray hair.
Yeah.
It's so funny you say that. That was exactly my thought process, Dave, coming from a similar background to you with the corporates. The older you get and the longer you're in that game, the more you see how just irrelevant most of it is. And that's not to throw shade at the corporate, the organizations that, you know, we've worked for, but it's just so, your impact is so low. It's so negligent that when you get to do the complete opposite, which is, you know, you could go and open your own business making websites, but to go from, you know, a corporate world to literally using your hands to build stuff, it's just this epiphany moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree, it's not to throw shade in the corporate thing, but there's a different set of objectives there. And I think what we're talking about is agency, and you just don't have it. Like, you think that you do, someone gives you a set of parameters to achieve a thing, but then you go, well, I want to do it this way, and you go, no, you can't do it that way. Yeah. Oh, because of this and this reason.
Because of corporate forces. Yeah.
But it's usually the law, which is important, but it's restrictive, and that's okay. And it's just, and then there's, politics and always money at the end of the day. And I think that I just disillusioned hugely with that idea, but it's also self-feeding itself. You know, it's like, there's like, oh, hey, we need to make, a better share price, right? But the shareholders are the people who are your customers. And if you make a worse product for your customers, but the share price goes up, what's the point, right? You need to have a better product, and then you have a better share price anyway because people like what you're doing. That's and I'm not a corporate, economist or I was very, very low down in that level of thinking, but it was like the layman's thinking about it just goes, I can't understand why our customers would want this. But hey, here we are. Anyway, I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. I could say a lot more about my thoughts about, the stuff. But anyway, the woodworking is what we're here to talk about. Sorry.
So how long have you been full-time now as a furniture maker?
Let's say a year and a half. Okay. Yeah, a year and a half doing it full-time. Technically started the business in April of last year. And I will say I've taken a very cautious approach, and not a particularly, I'll be honest, it's not a very financially viable approach so far. But it's, year one.
That was going to be towards my next question. Yeah, is the graph going up?
The graph is going up, yeah. And the profitability of each job is going up, and the learning of each of that. But I think because I'd never made something for someone and asked them for money, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know all the steps that were involved. And yes, it was a big leap to do that. But I figured that I'd done that, I knew the basics of how the product economics should work. It's just the process of doing it was hard. And I also will say I have purely relied on word of mouth and doing jobs, and it's friends and family, and then they recommend, and then you pick up jobs here and there and do lots of different sort of stuff, because I wanted to spend the first good chunk of time figuring out what I wanted to make, because I had spoken to heaps of makers and listened to the podcast, endlessly, and talked with others in the community, and just sort of gone, and they were like, it's really hard. It's hard to be a generalist. And you will have more traction and more success if you specify, but then it's kind of like, well, if you specify into something you hate doing, or it doesn't really resonate with you, like if you just end up making, not to say anything bad about kitchens, but let's say that you don't like making kitchens, but that's all you make. What's the point? Like it's obviously there's the, to survive, but that you could do better with it if you wanted. And so I'm still on that kind of journey of trying to figure out what I want to specifically focus on making and tooling up for that, because that would be more efficient. And I'm still not there yet. I'm still doing custom commissions for clients and making things that work for them. But it's teaching me the skills of, taking a design brief and working up a design, and then pricing and delivery and all that kind of stuff, all the things that you don't think about.
Because that will have a pretty direct effect on how you market yourself as well. Because if you carry on doing what you're doing, taking on commissions, at some point you'll have to say or start saying no when you work out what it is or isn't that you do or don't want to make. And so that will affect how you even market yourself, or even if you do market yourself, if you want to end up doing your own like artisanal furniture and that's all you make, then it becomes more of an artist artwork type situation, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think as well that I've been, in my corporate life, I was what's called a product owner. I don't know, Robin, if that term resonates with you from the IT days, but it's effectively like you run a product that's made up of technical teams. But you have to define what the product is, and you've got to have the way that it gets sold and gets marketed, and why it's beneficial, and you can do your market research, and you've got to understand that you can do something that's not hugely unique, but there still has to be some point of differentiation and a target market and all that kind of stuff. And I just know that I've needed time to do the work and ruminate on it and go, okay, I made a built-in cupboard out of some custom doors, and spent 2 weeks working with melamine sheets and MDF and all that kind of stuff, and went, it looked really great at the end. I can see why people would like doing it, but for me, I don't think that I'll ever, unless I invest in a giant factory and a CNC machine and this whole other thing, and That's not what I want to do. So it's like, great, I did the job. It was a great experience.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that again.
Never again. Yeah.
Yeah, and not to say it's a bad job. It's just not for me. It doesn't. It's nothing but stress and worry and standing there with an iron and ironing on edge banding because I'm not going to drop. I'm not going to drop 10 or 15k on an edge bander to run in my garage. It doesn't make any sense. So, so continuing to kind of be small and choose what I do is the plan. And I have this plan of actually making my own product range of things that I want to make that I'm still sort of germinating. But for the moment, I'll keep taking commissions. And that's primarily so that I get better at doing all the other bits. For me, my big area that I have to improve on is design, because I have no formal design training and I feel really, really incapable. Like, I'm still drawing stick figures that a 2-year-old would be able to do better. I know 2-year-olds who draw better stick figures than me. So it's like my ability to actually sketch and do things, and coming from an engineering background, my expectation is to go in very technically, but I just know that I have to practice. So that's what I try and do is, it's that whole complex thing about getting good at design is a whole skill in itself. There's people who are just designers and that's all they specialize in doing. But it's roughly the same process of how you do it. It's just, getting practice at doing that.
I was going to ask you about this, Dave, whether at the start when you first got into like whittling that first spoon, was it trying to design it on the fly, like as you were carving it, or were you copying a spoon that was it Handsome & Co? That Handsome & Co provides for the class? Because I'm really interested. I think, I've gone back to education now and I'm doing my master's thesis on the future of hands-on making and whether or not this, at the minute in schools, a lot of the technical skills are taught separately to the creative skills. And, they're moving further and further apart as technology is taking over and schools are requiring CNCs and things like that. So I'm really interested to know, like when you're starting from scratch and you've never made anything before, how did you feel designing it on the fly?
Yeah, the Handsome & Co one was from a template because they had the blanks cut out. Actually, no, you had to draw the design and then you cut it out on the bandsaw, which was terrifying for somebody who'd never used a bandsaw before. But subsequent spoons were all, it was taking more of that approach of doing what the wood tells you. So, it's like you have the constraint of the material and you know that you roughly want a shape. And so you just kind of work with the dimensions that you have to make it roughly the shape that it is. And that's how I think that has actually now that I think about it, it's very common in my design approach now in furniture, is that I'm trying to focus on what the grain has. So I do a lot of book matching in the things that I make. And so I try and use that to then, if there's a particular way that grain flows in a piece of timber, I'll use that piece of timber to make it flow, or stand out in some sort of way. But the design aspect of spoon making, I think, or bowl carving is very much more about what's there in the tree. And then just working with it to make something that's roughly going to do the function that it serves. And there are really, really, having, being involved in Lost Trades Fair and meeting all those kind of incredibly talented people at Lost Trades Fair who do all that green woodworking, you can see how they have a rough design shape that is actually interesting visually to look at, that's still functions as a spoon, but it's got curves and shapes and whatever else. But then they still get constrained by the material. There's a split, there's a bend, there's an elbow, there's a crook. They're going to use that how they can. So that informs a lot of what I do.
It's probably spoons are probably a really, really good entry-level project, I reckon. Yeah, that's interesting. I've added it to my notes for school. Thanks, Dave. I would say with the fact that you name drop Paul Sellers is really interesting as well. He's probably a name that hasn't really come up much here, but Joey, Robin, I'm sure you're aware of who he is, yeah?
Yeah.
I know of him. I've seen a couple of his videos, but I never watched heaps. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
obviously definitely very different from other YouTube instructors. Like his stuff is very quiet. It's sort of no bullshit. It's a really interesting approach to woodworking. You know, you'll get the Ramon Valdez and the Rob Cosmans and things like that really, I mean, come up with amazing stuff, and I love watching their work. But a lot of it goes beyond what an entry-level woodworker can process in their mind. Whereas I think Paul's stuff, it's really simple tips. It's not necessarily about achieving perfection. It's like, well, how do I get quick enough to what's gonna work and get me woodworking? Even just his chisel sharpening and card scraper tuning, things like that. He's a brilliant person to watch for anybody who is new to woodworking and is either just getting into the YouTube rabbit hole and watching these people talk loudly. I'm not talking about you, Robin. I'm not talking about you. But just like people who are, it's an entertainment product as opposed to being an actual learning resource. Paul is the man
100%.
for learning resources, so go check him out.
Yeah. And I think it worked. Again, it worked for me, or Paul's teachings at the time worked for me because it was quiet. It just is quiet to work that way. And so if I'm there at midnight, you know, you can't hear a plane shaving being taken next door. You can hear me swearing that I took too much off the bit or whatever else it was. You know, the loudest thing that you'll probably do in hand tool woodworking is chopping mortises with a chisel. And so that was reserved for weekends during the day, if I could. But I really, Paul's thing it was the workbench series. He has like a 10-part full, every single step that you need to do to build a functioning, full, heavy workbench with no cuts, no shortcuts, whatever. It takes forever. But it's like, if you wanted someone to be instructional about how to make one, and I think that's why there's so many of them. And I kept building some of his other plans and all that kind of stuff. My YouTube consumption of woodworking and the content that I consume around woodworking has sort of shifted as I've gotten more mature into the craft. I'm not saying that I'm mature, but getting mature. Now that I'm doing this, you know, it's much more listening to kind of like, you know, obviously a Shop Stool podcast, but also the way to think about woodworking and approach design. And, you know, it's getting to those kind of like the bits that you have to do before the plan happens. The drawn plan, because that's the stuff that I don't know about. And I also like to think about the ethics of it as well. There's some pretty brilliant, you know, podcasts out there. If I can name drop a few of them, Woodworking is Bullshit is a brilliant kind of. Those guys really, they like to really get into the weeds, and I think it's kind of nice because if you're standing here by yourself working, you know, 10-hour days, you tend to think about stuff quite a lot. And it's nice to have some structure around that thinking and hear people say, oh, I think this or that. It's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So there's some relatability there. But I think going from being is a good point, a segue point. So going from being like a YouTube-led learner to then going to class, I understood why it's valuable to go to class. And I get it's not easy. It's expensive a lot of the time, but it is so much. You get a lot for the time that you're there every single time. Every single time I've gone to class, it felt like I accelerated through YouTube University like by 9 months in the space of a week. You know, so one of the things that, you know, I would recommend to anybody who's trying to do something or is interested in the hobby is go to class first. Because you might spend $300 on wood and tools to carve a spoon, or you could spend $300 to go and learn how to carve a spoon properly and also sharpen and strop and read grain and learn about the timber. And you can't do that. And then you'll have somebody who's there going, oh, hey, actually hold it this way or that way. That's safer. That's better. That's stronger. That's more control. You can't get that from remote learning. So being in person and going to classes is, I think, hugely, hugely valuable, particularly if it's a skill that you feel is intimidating, because it's worth it. It's worth it every time. That's what I've found. And I think the other thing that's nice about classes is
about peer learning.
Sorry.
About peer learning in that kind of environment. You know, it's one thing to hit play and pause on a YouTube video, oh, I've got up to step 2, play, pause. Whereas there's something about being at a workbench, maybe sharing a workbench with one other person, seeing what stage they're up to, talking about it, making that connection, and I don't know, just collaborating a little bit. Because as beautiful as Instagram is, like chatting through text versus talking in person is a totally different thing, I think, when it comes to making a real object. And then you've made that connection and it might go forward. Maybe they take up woodworking as a hobby and you can sort of follow each other through the years. And it's a really, really good thing. Like classes, I know they're getting a bit harder to find in some places, but yeah, classes are the way forward.
And also we say all the time about how woodworkers are like these lone dogs stuck in these sheds. And
we're not
if you
dogs,
have the
we're
opportunity
wolves, lone
find
wolves, Joey.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Not alone
If you have the
wolves.
opportunity
Jesus.
to find someone else that is, you can if you can befriend someone in actual real life who's not too far away from you and be in the woodworking industry community, that's just a whole other connection, human interaction, where a lot of guys just, we are so spread out. We say it all the time. Everyone's spread out and stuck in their shed, and you don't get to meet many like-minded people. So
Yeah.
do it.
But then when you do get to meet them, and you can spend 2 hours talking about your preferred way to cut a mortise, right, and all the benefits of that, or material where you find it, it's like nirvana. You're just like, oh yeah, and then your partner or spouse or family or friends or your dog doesn't have to listen to you talk about stuff that they don't understand in any way. They're like, what grain direction? What are you on about, you nutter? Just cut the wood. Wood is wood. But yeah, so that's exactly my experience. Actually, is that I made friends in class, and we sort of, and they were like, "Oh, you're on social media," and I was like, "Oh, a little bit." Like I got Instagram, I think in 2019 or something like that, and started posting some stuff on there, and it was just a couple of friends who would like it or whatever. But then I actually started to connect with more people that way. And so that was really great to get exposed to like the wide world of woodworkers. There's people who I chat with in the States or the UK or, in all different kinds of countries about woodworking. But it was at Burns' class that I found out about the VWA, the Victorian Woodworkers Association, because I just didn't know that was around. Like I thought in my head, oh, there's men's sheds, but that's not really my scene. I was 30 at the time and I was like, I could probably go, but I don't know that I have a lot in common. And there's plenty of people who are young people who go to that kind of thing, but I was like, I don't know if that's really, what I'm trying to do. And so I sort of got curious and then heard about it and then went to a meeting, a members meeting that they were running, and was like, yeah, this is the kind of thing that I'm interested in, the fine furniture making. And there's a group of people who are interested in doing that. And so about 3 years ago, I put my hand up to join the committee of the Victorian Woodworkers Association, because I felt like, I've got all these kind of corporate management skills. I can go to a meeting once a month and work on stuff. Sure, that's easy. And it was another way of giving me like that sort of antidote to the corporate life. It's a purely altruistic, voluntary pursuit in the pursuit of improving woodworking and access to woodworking and fine furniture making for your local community. Like, what could be better, for me and the skill set that I had. And so I didn't realize that I wanted more access to the community or felt like I needed it until I went and experienced it for the first time. It was like, oh, this is great. This is, even if it's sporadic, this is kind of like, this is fulfilling something it's fulfilling something that I didn't know that I was missing until I was there. So then that's how I sort of got involved with the VWA. They'd done a report through the Melbourne Business School, I want to say, about what was affecting small makers or solo makers in the industry around Melbourne at the time. And there was like a set of objectives that could be worked on. This was coming out of COVID. And that was the kind of stuff that I was really used to dealing with. It's like someone's done some analysis and there's a report, there's recommendations. And I went, oh, great. I reckon I could help build one of those things. I could do part of that recommendation of something. And so that's how I thought, yeah, I could get more involved in this community and try and help out. So that's really nice. So, fast forward sort of 2.5 or 3 years on, I'm now the president of the Victorian Woodworkers Association.
Okay.
Because the current,
I didn't realize you were the president of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's.
right.
I didn't know a lot about non-profits and boards and all that kind of stuff when I joined, but it's kind of, you have official officers who hold responsibilities and they do certain things to run the organisation. And so the president at the time was a brilliant guy, Stephen Zaguras, who's a maker, a furniture maker. He decided he'd done 5 years as president, and it was, he was ready to hand the baton over. And so the general meeting came around, and I put my hand up and said, yeah, I'd do it, because I had just sort of decided to go full time, and I knew that I was going to have more time to do stuff, but it also felt like it was going to be a good thing to keep that sort of that skill level honed, I suppose you could say, honed and sharpened of running a team of people and an organisation and everything you need to do to make that happen. So that's the VWA. Is the Victorian Woodworkers Association. If I can, do you guys have any questions about the VWA or what we do, or any questions about what I was talking about?
Maybe we should drop the bomb, because I'll let Robin do it. But we've spoken about it for years on this show that we have been approached by some weird people for sponsorship and collaborations, and we've always said we don't want a paywall on the podcast, we don't want a Patreon, we don't want to force people to listen, and we don't want products advertised in our show that we don't believe in. So, Robin, drop it.
Yeah. So, Dave got in touch with us it's a couple months back now at this point, just to see if we could do a bit of content promotion for the VWA on the podcast. So, in the coming episodes, you're going to hear some promotion about the VWA, including what they do, what's happening at that current time. So basically, we're just going into a sponsorship partnership with them, and so that's why we wanted to get Dave on the show today as well. Obviously, to talk about him as a furniture maker, but also just talk about the VWA in general, what they do, and really kick off this partnership. So, Dave, that's a good place then for you to go forth and explain what does the VWA do for furniture makers around Australia?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that's important to say that we have members. We're a member-based organisation, so there's membership, but you can get involved without being a member. But we do have members all around Australia. So we are Victorian because that's where we're based, and but we help everyone around the place. So we've been actually around for a really long time. We were established in 1979. So that's almost 50 years. Should be better at math, but yeah, close to 50 years. And the whole goal of the VWA is to effectively promote and increase access to fine woodworking and fine furniture making. And that can be, it's a range of things. It sort of excludes us, I think, maybe from like carpentry and tradition, that kind of stuff. Right. But the fine aspects of woodworking is really the kind of what we focus on, and that includes artistic pursuits, fine furniture making, carving, sculpture, all that kind of stuff. And so, sorry, go.
Well, has the VWA got like a warehouse workshops, or is it? I mean, how is that managed? How do you do these things?
Yeah. So we have we've been at a place in North Melbourne called the Meat Market, which isn't a meat market, but you guys are familiar with the space from when you were there for Wood Dust. Yeah. So underneath the big open space, there is a basement workshop there, and I think we've been there since the 80s. Because the meat market used to be like this central hub for all these kind of artisanal practices. And people used to have stalls inside, and there was glass blowers and metal workers and jewelers and blacksmiths and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, we have been woodworking down there since the 80s in a workshop set up in the basement. So we're kind of like this nice little red door in this side lane that has our plaque on it, that not many people really know what it is, but that's where we are based out of.
Okay. That's a cool spot.
Yeah, and it's also really centrally located, if you're in Melbourne. Like Now with the new stations and stuff, it's about a 5-minute walk from a train station, which is nice. I think it's I can't remember the name of the new station now. But we are really centrally located, which is fantastic.
It's like, when we think about it, like the number of guests that we've had on this show that have either been members and active participants of the VWA or have managed to become an artist in residence there, like the names are just, I mean, I reckon we've probably had about 10 guests that have spent time at the benches in there. So people like Adam Markowitz, Alexander Pontonio, Isabel, Simeon, like this has been the incubator for so many great makers that have come out of Australia. And it's just such a brilliant organization to get involved with. So yeah, I'm really, really happy for you guys to come to us to try to promote you, because I don't think we could find a better partner to promote.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. It seems like a really good fit. And I'm really happy you guys agreed to, take us on, because I think we're just all about we just need to tell more people about what we do, so that we can help them. That's the whole idea. So but yeah, like you said, so there's lots of incredible makers that have come through the VWA's Artisan Residence program. So we run a 3 to 4 year Artisan Residence program, which is kind of like an incubator. But the idea is that it's to help skilled, crafts people set up themselves into a really sustainable craft business. So they get, 24/7 access to the workshop. They get their own space within that workshop. And the workshop's pretty incredible in terms of the machinery and all the kind of stuff that we have down there. It's all fully maintained. So you're not having to worry about that as well. And you effectively get involved with the VWA. You share back to the community because, their membership fees and the revenues that come in through the different things that we do helps to support those spots. And you pay, a monthly rent that is heavily subsidised and much lower than what you would be paying in other places. Right. Because that's the idea. But there's an application process that you have to go through to get to that, and it's pretty competitive and pretty highly coveted. So lots of people have come through that. Lots of makers of the year from the Wood Review, because I think it allows people to have that space and time to really pursue their craft and their brand and their design and their product and what they want to do. So that's a big part of what we
both
support.
of those things are so. I was just going to say, these days, that having that time and the space is pretty much what everybody lacks. And you can't do a heck of a lot about time. You have control over your own life. But if you don't have the space to actually do any work, then you can't progress with whatever your passion is. So it's an awesome setup.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice because it's not just you as well. So there's 5 positions, 5 artists in residence at any one time, and you're all doing different things. Right. One of our artists in residence is an incredible sculptor. We have another one who runs a really interesting business making cat scratching poles out of recycled materials, but then is also pursuing fine furniture as a craft. We've got a couple of people, a newer artist in residence, who are really exploring what they want to make at the moment, and just that process of becoming a maker for other people. And another guy who is got a really, really strong design idea of using colour and recycled timber in the work that he does in making really kind of arty sculptural pieces. So there's a great group of people who all do different things, and you get that kind of collegiate experience. You're going through something together and trying to make it work in an increasingly more difficult world. So the space and the access is really, really valuable to people. The other thing that we do to kind of help, people who are starting off their making journey but have the idea that they do really want to pursue it, is we run a scholarship program, an annual scholarship called the Vic Wood Award. Vic Wood was one of the founding members of the Victorian Woodworkers Association, and he was an incredibly skilled and globally recognised wood turner. And so we established this.
Born to do the job with a name like Vic Wood.
I was just about to make that joke.
Yeah. I think there's actually a joke on Reddit about it somewhere. That someone's like, "Can you believe that there's a guy called Vic Wood?" And he's anyway. So that's you have to be a member to apply. And it's an annual scholarship. This year, the amount is $2,800, and it has to go towards you or whoever wins the scholarship. It's to go towards you going and doing a class, so that you can further your skill set or further your ability to teach somebody or whatever else it is. So, past winners of that have gone and done like production classes with Evan Dunstan at Dunstan Designs, like a really highly skilled maker, and he's teaching them. Or we're going to have a presentation a bit later in the year from a previous winner who went to Japan and learned how to make Japanese kana and Japanese tools and sharpen and do Japanese joinery. So there's a whole range of different things you could apply for, but the applications for that are actually coming up soon. But you'll hear more about that when we talk about that, over the next couple of episodes of the podcast. I'll tell people where they can find out more towards the end of what we do. The other thing that we do is we have an education program. So we run a school. I think it's 60 or 70 students a week come through. And there's a total beginners class that gets booked out really quickly. And then we have open classes as well. And so that's 10 people, 2 teachers. There's people who've been coming to those classes for like 10 years straight. So for them, it's not just about the skills, but it's also about the people who are in their class, and they're all mates and they just go together and have been involved in a long time. Awesome. So it's a really... It's super, super popular, and the spots get filled really, really quickly all the time, unfortunately. But it's a really fantastic way. We actually had an article published by one of our students in The Guardian earlier this year, because for him, he actually went to class to try and explore, woodworking help him with his mental health, and he used to suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. And he said the act of woodworking and coming to class for 2 years has basically meant it's helped me massively with my anxiety, which is kind of strange to think about it. The way he put it was, you wouldn't think that a screaming table saw blade being millimeters away from your finger would help you with feeling calm, but it does in some way. So, but it really helped him. And so that was, I think, a really fantastic way of explaining the other benefits of coming to class and learning how to woodwork, similar to what I experienced in that shave horse in Burns class.
Right.
So we run the school, and then I think for people other fine furniture, who are people who are running business or making, so we have a craft insurance scheme. It's a bulk scheme, which is it's basically you pay an annual fee. It starts on a set date, but it gives you $20 million of public and product liability cover, and that's the kind of cover that you need to be able to, go out and make something for somebody, or have a market stall, or run a workshop as a teacher. It's one of those things that it's sort of like you don't realize you need it until you try and start doing it. And then you go, and someone says, oh, well, you can't come here unless you have this cover. And you go, well, where the hell am I going to get that? And every insurance company will sell you that, but it's expensive. And so the reason why we do it in bulk is because it's bulk. So it works out. It works for the insurance company because they get to do selling of something in bulk, and it works for us and the people who take up the insurance because we then get to, provide it at a much cheaper rate than other people would do. So that insurance scheme has just started up for the year. It renews, the insurance kicks in on the 31st of August. And so we've just reopened the sales of that, and we have plenty of people who take that up. It's really, really popular.
And just to double check with that, is that just for Victoria, or is that across the country?
It's all of Australia, and it technically covers global aspects excluding the US and Canada. But you have to be an Australian resident to take it up,
Right.
effectively. Yeah. Sorry, Joe.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the other thing, there's lots of things that you get as being a benefit of being a member. One of the things that we run is members meetings pretty regularly, and that can cover a whole range of different topics. So we come and have people talk about their experiences overseas or what they've learned or how they run their practices. We just did a meeting last week about how to define your target market. So we like to also focus on those professional business skills as well, and come and have experienced people come in and talk about that stuff. Pricing is a big one. We've run a number of meetings that are just kind of open to people to figure out how to come and do the pricing of your work, because that's obviously a big part of it. But we've also done really interesting things like go out to an agroforestry plantation in Romsey in Victoria and understand how they're growing timber and trees and the selection and what it takes to grow a furniture grade tree in 30 years. So we try and focus on everything that gets involved in woodworking, from finishing to where you get your materials from. Our next meeting that's actually coming up is going to be with friend of the show, Jem is going to be there, and we have Darren from Crafted Hardwood. So they're going to come in and talk about how they make their material, which is using, essentially putting veneers together, low-grade veneers, to then create a new workable material. So that's going to be really interesting, and they're going to come down and do that in the workshop and demonstrate some products. Awesome. The other thing is, as a member, if you're just trying to start out and have a spot where you can advertise what you do, so we have a members directory and a jobs board. So you can basically put up a few photos and some contact details and a blurb about what you do. And then you get access to a jobs board. So we regularly have people send us emails and inquiries about things that they can make. Sometimes it's a bit strange. We did a couple of times we've had requests for coffins. But other times it's, can you make a table out of recycled timber? So you get this whole gamut of all the things that you could do with woodworking. It's a great way to see and also to set expectations about how much people are willing to pay for certain things and how you might have to navigate that conversation. When someone's like, oh, can you make a box for $100?
Yeah.
And you say, oh, I'm really sorry, but no. So how do you do that? Yeah. So that members directory is a really great way to put yourself out there if you don't want to have to buy a Squarespace subscription and set up a website and a form and all that kind of stuff. We also run exhibitions. It's been a while since we did one, but we do have plans for running exhibitions coming up into the near future, so you get early access to that as a way to exhibit your work. And we also have something called Design Club, which is a monthly just kind of friendly Zoom call. So it runs online. But if you wanted to practice your design communication skills, you get to do that with a group of other people who are also interested in doing the same thing. So that's, you get 15 minutes to say, hey, I had this design idea. And I started it because I was like, I don't know who to talk to about design. I have no idea if my design's any good. Right. So maybe I can get some like-minded individuals to come along and see if that's something they'd be interested in doing. So
yeah, that's such a good one.
Yeah.
That's such a good one. Having that service available.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because you guys started doing all the podcasts. Like Robin, you'd bring up a SketchUp file and be like, I'm thinking about making it this thick or this thin, or talking about material. And obviously, Joey and Bryan have a huge amount of experience, but it's that exact same conversation. It really is. It's like I was thinking about making this chair this way, and sometimes it's technical, but then sometimes it's also like, oh well, what's the design brief and why have you done it that way? And have you thought about it? And so we always say the feedback either has to be constructive or it has to be positive. You can't just walk in and be like, oh, I reckon that chair looks like crap. That's not helpful to anybody.
Yes, that's terrible. Just give it up. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, so it's always more like, oh, hey, maybe you could try and explore this idea. Right, like there's something about this that it feels a little bit heavy down the bottom. So maybe if you try thinning that out, or I don't know, there's lots of stuff. When people design all different types of things, we try and, if you're not sure, if you don't have anything to design but you just want to practice, like you don't have a project you're working on, we provide a monthly prompt or a design brief. So like last month's was like design something that's 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters that is inspired by your favorite plant. And it's just kind of like, okay, what's your favorite plant? And then you just need that spark and that idea, and then you need a constraint. And then you design away and you come back, and it just gives you access to, that kind of feedback loop. So quite often we've had people who are actually working on commissions come through and be like, oh, I've got a commission for this, but I'm sort of not sure about this part of the design. And sometimes everyone goes, no, it's great. And it just validates them. It gives them a bit of confidence. And I think,
Right.
I think I heard this really interesting. Everyone said, I heard a quote over the weekend, but I thought it was interesting because everyone says practice makes perfect. But really the quote should be practice makes proficiency. Because there's no such thing as perfect.
Yeah.
But proficiency you can gain.
Yeah,
and so if you are practicing your design skills or your hand tool skills or your table saw or bandsaw or whatever else it is, the more that you practice and do it, the more proficient and therefore confident you will become. And that's how you get better. I think that's the other hard part
so
that
true.
I had to learn.
I'm going to take that on board. That's a really interesting little thing. I love that because, the better at something you get, the more you do it, and you're just so much faster at it. You know exactly where the pitfalls are, and I mean, it makes sense, but to have it explained like that, so simply,
Yeah.
I like
It was
that.
a pasta maker chef who said that, which kind of makes sense because if
Okay.
you're making pasta by hand, you only get better by doing it,
That's right.
So yeah, and so I think that thought about, practice makes proficiency, I think then it's sort of immediately connected to also what my journey through woodworking has been like, because it's like you can watch all the YouTube videos of people doing slab tables you want. It's not the same as getting there with the slab in front of you on the table and trying to figure it out. You just have to do it to get better at it. And if you go to a class, you'll get better faster because you get taught how to practice better than trying to figure it out yourself. Like I really struggled with sharpening scrapers. And then I went to Burns' class and he was like, here's how you sharpen a scraper, and it clicked. And I was like, okay, great. And now I've got that. It was a 5-minute lesson of something that I'd struggled with for 6 months, So there's a huge efficiency there. So that's, look, there's a lot of stuff that the VWA does, and it can be a bit hard to keep track of all of it. So here's the info. So you can head to vwa.org.au to find out everything that we do. There's also a newsletter link. So we send out a monthly newsletter about what we have going on, which is the best way to kind of keep up with what we've got going on, because we know that it'll land in your inbox. So maybe we can put a link in the show notes for people to sign up to that. But you can also find it, I think it's vwa.org.au/newsletter. And you can follow us on social medias at Vic Woodworkers. We post there really regularly about what we're doing, what our artists and residents are doing, what's happening with classes and times and openings, and heaps of stuff on social media. We try and stay really, really connected to people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for the rundown, Dave. That was awesome. We will, as alluded to, as the episodes roll out over the season, we'll have more information about it as well. We're excited to have you guys on board.
Yeah, and thank you for, like I said, it feels like a really natural, good idea. We would really try and explore how do we get out there more, and I went, Shop Stool podcast, of course. Maybe that's something that could work out, and here we are. That's what we do. And for my socials, I'm on Instagram at dave.delacruz.woodwork. I think that's what it is.
Right.
It's Cruz like Penelope Cruz, Cruz. Not Cruz like Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise,
Cruz. So that's what I do. Currently building a solid hue-on pine commission, which has been super fascinating and expensive, but fun.
Yeah, some of your work is very, very cool. All hand tools, very interesting stuff.
Well,
Now,
not all hand tools now. I bought a bandsaw.
Okay.
I bought a bandsaw and a jointer and a thicknesser because I did the first job with hand tools only, and I went, I don't think anyone's going to be able to afford this, so I leaned into it. Yeah.
So we are coming up to time. So I just wanted to ask one more thing. If I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago, you sent in a question to the show about it was the same, Dave, about my experience so far as a full-time maker. You know, what it's, I think the question was based around what have I learned. Can I put the question back to you now that it's been 18 months? If you had any advice for someone wanting to do this, what piece of advice would you give them? Or I guess, what would you say to them to prepare them for the rabbit hole they're about to go down?
18 months of, I think I called it doing a Robin at one stage, which was how I described it, of going and doing it, trying to do it full time. I actually had someone ask me this question a couple of weeks ago, and I think they're a hobbyist, and they're like, "Oh, what do I need to try if I'm going full time?" And I think, from my experience, I think that you need to try making something for someone and selling it to them for money, just once. However you try and do that, because I feel like if you try it once and if you get really caught up on one part of that process, that is really going to irk you, or you find it really frustrating, you're only going to have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. So that may not exactly be for you to do it that way. Whether that's you, let's say you make something, or you put it out out there for somebody, and you say, "Hey, it's going to cost you $5,000 for this piece," and just see the reaction that happens. That's a hard lesson to learn. Right, the first time, because you can see the value, but they can't. And if you don't want to get better at doing that and go through the struggle of having to, value your time and figure out the business, because you will spend a lot of your time running a business doing this. If you don't like running a business, it's a really hard way to spend your time doing it. It's not all baking all day. So I would say that. I think it's try it once. Try it once, and if you like it, then keep doing it. And if you don't like it, go, okay, this is going to be a hobby, or if you're in between, then maybe try it again. The other thing that I've only learned recently, which is a really practical and dumb thing, but it's really simple, is if you are going to try and do it, make in the mornings and manage in the afternoons. As a really, I was so used to looking at my emails first thing and trying to do all that stuff and figure out jobs and clients and talk to, and it was like, it'd get to midday and I'd be like, I haven't actually touched anything. No shavings have been taken. No chips have been cut.
What have I done? Yeah.
I've gone back to the email factory. That's not why I was here. So get your making done in the morning. You can do your management stuff, in the afternoon or possibly in the evening, like a lot of us do. But that is I feel like it just works out better that way, and you get through more stuff, and you make better stuff if you do it that way. So that's a new thing that I figured out for myself and how to run my days.
Cool. All right, we will touch base with you in a couple of years, and we'll see if there's any more nuggets of wisdom, or if those things are what you've just suggested came true.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, it would be great. I'd love to come back on as a long-time listener. I think you guys definitely influenced me into doing this because you showed me that it was possible, and all the stuff that you've talked about with guests over the years. All that stuff just kind of flowing around in my ears and in my head, just sort of it made it feel possible. And that's also sort of what I want to try and do with the VWA, is make it feel more possible, even if it's harder than it was 10 years ago. So thank you to you guys for doing this as well, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. All right, all the best, man. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, see yous.
See ya.
Bye.